Hey, what's up everybody? I hope you're all fantastic. Thanks for stopping by another episode of my top 100 movies of the 1980s series. We're getting to the nitty gritty as we approach the top of this list. Today I'm covering movies number 40 through 31. As always, there's a little bit of everything in this collection of classics. Some laughs, some holiday charm, action adventure, some fantasy, some horror, and a quick trip out to the Old West. All the synopsises for these films will be down in the description as always, as will be the links to all the past episodes if you've missed them. So with all the introductions out of the way, let's get into the list. We're stepping back into the Old West to kick this list into gear with my number 40 pick. It's a movie that showed 6 reasons why the West was wild in 1988's Young Guns, starring Emilio Estevez, Charlie Sheen, Lou Diamond Phillips, Kiefer Sutherland, and a few other familiar faces. Now, I will admit this story is a bit surface level, the plot is simple, and the characters are more or less one note, but I think if you watch this like a full-throttle 80s action movie with a Western twist, that there is plenty of fun to be found. It's loaded with star power. Sutherland, Sheen, Phillips, Palance, Stamp, all of them fill their roles with plenty of gusto, led by Emilio Estevez, who just shines as the wild card Billy the Kid as he just drops bodies and dispenses one-liners throughout this movie. The action and the violence are frequent. It does get a tad repetitive. There is an overuse of smoke, and the direction is merely serviceable, but the edginess and the attitude of this film, despite its superficial veneer, is just an 80s delight out on the countryside. Moving along to my number 39 pick, I have a little rom-com from 1987. They say that a date with her is every man's dream come true, but with dreams like her, who needs nightmares? In the comical classic Blind Date starring Kim Basinger, Bruce Willis in his first credited full-feature film, and 80s comedy legend John Larroquette. Now, I have no doubt this movie is probably higher on the list than it should be, but I just love this wacky movie. This was the first lead performance for Willis, and his endearing chemistry with Basinger just completely sells this plot. It's absurd, it's over the top and ridiculous, but in all the ways you kind of want it to be in a movie that's clearly having fun with itself. This is just the date movie from hell. It's filled with adventurous moments of just comical insanity as Willis and Basinger go all in on these characters. Phil Hartman really makes the most of a smaller role, and John Larroquette just shines as the insane ex-boyfriend intent on destroying any chance at love between these characters. The plot beats are they're clearly dated, but it was the 80s, and this movie just has a ton of heart to it, and it's just a feel-good rom-com that successfully leans much more into the comedy. We're stepping into the world of horror for my number 38 selection, a classic genre flick and probably the most violent PG movie of all time, a film from a dimension beyond the living that delivers terror that can scare you to death in 1982's Poltergeist, starring Craig T. Nelson, Jo Beth Williams, and Heather O'Rourke. Now, this is a movie that just creeped me out as a kid. To be honest, it still kind of does today. It's really a slow burn paranormal thriller that goes full horror, and the practical effects and the stunt work I think hold up great all these years later. This is a visually eerie movie, but just not from the frightening moments alone, but also from just the overall just ominous atmosphere that it builds. I think you can easily get behind this family as they deal with this malevolent force terrorizing them. It ramps up the tension perfectly as each horrific event escalates the uneasiness, and it really just takes you on a ride. Poltergeist delivered some iconic cinematic moments in the 80s, and with the sadistic just spectacle of the overall finale, the result is a completely engrossing genre film. After that movie, we're going to lighten it up with a little bit of holiday cheer for my number 37 pick, one of the all-time great Christmas movies, one that proves there is no place like home for the holidays, in the 1989 feel-good hit National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, starring Chevy Chase, Beverly D'Angelo, and Randy Quaid, from the mind of John Hughes. This is a holiday classic to me, and watching Clark Griswold bumble through Christmas always brings me joy and helps ignite that holiday spirit inside me. There are so many comical moments, from Clark lighting up his house to shopping to dealing with Cousin Eddie. This, I think, is the best film in the franchise outside of the original, and it's because just the National Lampoon's sense of humor fuses in perfectly with the holiday season. Clark's a bumbling fool that can never do anything right, yet his heart is gold. It's always in the right place, so you kind of can't help but love him. The movie keeps a quick pace. It relies on slapstick humor, the spirit of the holiday, sight gags, and situational laughs, and it's all a delight because for all the ridiculousness and the absurdity, the lovable characters and the laughs of this movie make it really one of a kind. Now, I think we all know the rules for my number 36 pick. Don't get him wet, don't get him in the sunlight, and never feed him after midnight. Another holiday favorite of mine from 1984, Gremlins, starring Zach Galligan, and another childhood love of mine, Phoebe Cates, along with Corey Feldman and furry little Gizmo. Now, this is another Christmas rotation movie for me. It's filled with so much nostalgia growing up. It's completely bizarre and out of the box. It's lighthearted, but at the same time it's pretty dark, which gives it a completely different viewing experience as an adult compared to when I was a kid. The Gremlins are both menacing and cool, and the product placement in this film is like a step back into just the world of 80s pop culture. It's a fun blend of genres with classic moments of horror and suspense and action and humor. I think seeing Mrs. Deagle get shot out of her window was the first time I ever laughed at somebody being murdered in a movie. The kitchen sequence is just a classic. It's so well crafted, as are many other moments as this small town is taken over, and despite all the advancements of technology, the practical effects in this movie solidify it as a timeless classic. Hitting the middle of this list, I have a movie about a high school kid that wanted to be special, but he never expected this in the 1985 coming-of-age werewolf comedy Teen Wolf, starring Michael J. Fox, Jerry Levine, and coincidentally another childhood crush of mine, Susan Ursitti, along with James Hampton. I just love this coming-of-age high school tale that's got a werewolf twist to it, and I think Michael J. Fox is perfect in the lead. I mean, outside of the werewolf elements, there are many relatable traits to Fox's character. I think you can kind of connect with him through that. He doesn't fit in, he's looking for love in all the wrong places, and it gives the eccentric 80s comedy plenty of heart to invest in. It's filled with plenty of 80s rock and pop. Styles kind of steals the show, and Boof was, as I said, another childhood crush of mine. I tended to have many childhood crushes growing up, to no surprise. It also delivers all the coming-of-age tropes, but I think it blends it with drama and humor and fantasy and plenty of 80s charm, and Michael J. Fox as a basketball-playing werewolf. I think this movie really knows what it is. It's having fun with itself, and the result is another classic from the decade. We get a rare sequel sighting on this list for my number 34 pick. It's another Spielberg classic with a tagline that simply said, "The hero is back." It's a movie that would also help to inspire the PG-13 rating we know today, 1984's Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, with Harrison Ford returning as Indiana Jones. I'm probably one of the few who like Temple of Doom over Raiders of the Lost Ark, but as a kid, this was the go-to movie for me. This was the film that I owned and watched religiously, and as an adult, while I can see that Raiders is critically a more sounder film, still the over-the-top, fast-paced insanity of this one can still lure me in. Ford's having a great time in the character, and I think Short Round certainly makes up for Capshaw's shortcomings. I just love the mood and the tone of this movie. I love the backdrops and just the adventures overall, and while it may be a bit more superficial than Raiders of the Lost Ark, this is still my go-to movie for Indiana Jones adventures. Coming up next at number 33 is a story about a man of peace living in a savage land, Suburbia, in 1989's dark comedy The Burbs from director Joe Dante, starring Tom Hanks, Rick Dukeman, Bruce Dern, Carrie Fisher, and Corey Feldman. I have no doubt this movie is higher on my list than others would have it on theirs. I'm sure some people wouldn't have it on their lists at all, but 80s comedy Tom Hanks is a favorite of mine, and his comedic brilliance just shines in this movie. It's a simple neighborhood story, but the progression is filled with comical moments and eccentric and charming characters and just unpredictable plot beats to keep you invested. It's just a mashup of genres. The over-embellishments are just crisp with close-ups to overemphasize the emotions, and just an over-enthusiastic score that really just elevates the mood to comical levels. The cast all shines around Hanks. Dern, Dukeman, Feldman, and Fisher all get their moments to land some laughs, while Hanks just quietly commands the screen with his natural timing. This movie just goes all in on the bizarre, and the result is a charismatic film that would close out a decade where strange movies like this were much more common than they are today. Next up at number 32 is a Stanley Kubrick classic based on a Stephen King novel, a film considered to be a masterpiece of modern cinema amongst those that say fancy things like that, that being 1980's The Shining, starring Jack Nicholson, Shelley Duvall, and Danny Lloyd. This is a classic that just lures you into the ominous atmosphere within the opening seconds. Kubrick's direction truly is flawless as he creates a backdrop and setting that can just easily consume you to make you just feel the isolation of these characters, and the sinister moments kick in quickly to just constantly have you on edge as to what's going to happen next. Jack Nicholson is fantastic and just deranged and completely unhinged, which is perfect for this character. Lloyd and Duvall bring great performances as well to really land some important story points, and it just all escalates with a methodical steadiness that looms over you while watching. And The Shining is just one of those movies that every time you watch it, it kind of feels like it's the first time. And to close out this list, I'm going to stick with 1980, as well as having another sequel for my number 31 pick. This is still my all-time favorite of the Star Wars movies, that being The Empire Strikes Back, directed by Irvin Kershner, continuing the world created by George Lucas, starring Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, and Billy Dee Williams. Personally, I think The Empire Strikes Back is easily the gold standard for Star Wars. It really is the perfect sequel. It advances the character, builds on the plot, it continues the world building, and it ups the stakes, and it's really all you can hope for a planet-hopping science fiction epic. I can't even count how many times I watched this movie as a kid and used old tubes of wrapping paper for lightsabers as a kid. It just weaves a compelling saga between Vader and Skywalker, but it really does pay attention to the subplots as well to advance everything with a nice pace, and it just delivers truly epic action and battle sequences that further push the envelope for cinematic effects. And when I want to sit back for some Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back is easily the go-to movie for me. And that's it for this video today, guys. I hope you've had a great time revisiting these classics with me. These are all awesome movies that I highly recommend checking out if you haven't seen them and are catching up on your 80s cinema. Be on the lookout for the next episode coming very soon. Only a few more of these left, and then the list is closed out. Thank you guys so much for watching and tuning into these episodes. It's been a great time. You're all awesome. And until the next video, I'll catch you guys at the movies.